Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. I was sitting here, same progressive, just said she's going to come on the show. And I was doing the video for it and I was writing it up. And I was sending the signage. And I sent it to my channel on the Progressive Soapbox on Facebook. And I was about to send it to Real Progressives. And in the moment I was about to hit send, I had this moment of, oh man, is this craven? Like, is it too much? Is it too much to put it on Real Progressives? All of us are in the same sandbox. Oh man, this is too much. You know, in no situation are you free. Like, so imagine for the moment you're in a sandbox world. And there is no God in that sandbox world. Now, I know some atheists would be like, dude, we don't have to imagine this. This is, this is essentially how things are. Fair enough. I understand your religious beliefs. And look, you're going to have some Christians who's like, how dare you question God? How dare you question God? Moses parted the Red Sea. All right, I get that too. Fair enough. I'm not trying to antagonize. Sandbox world, assume for the moment there is no God. Now, in that sandbox world, let's step into another point. A hammer. So a hammer was created for a very specific point, meaning a hammer was created by somebody to hammer things, either knocking down a nail or either taking out an attacker. A hammer had a purpose. Now, for human being just is, particularly in the sandbox world. If we were saying there's no God, this human being just is. However, he just is. He just is. There was no purpose. There was no external thing to give him any kind of meaning or purpose. He just is. He's not a hammer. He's whatever he wants to be. He's the intelligent hammer in that sense, or the intelligent object that didn't necessarily have a creator. Your purpose is whatever you give it in this case. That's all it is what you yourself give it. You're radically free. Don't feel all that free, do you? You don't feel all that free. Now, assume for the moment in the sandbox world, it was a live and let live environment, meaning you had a society arranged in a way that all your needs were met. So in that case, there's not scarcity. All your needs are met. And you have a liberal society. Meaning for the most part, you can do whatever you want. So live and let live. You're still constrained. Now, you're constrained in a few ways. In one way, how you were raised, meaning all of the experiences that you had for the most part left its mark on you, and leaving its mark on you, you were somehow constrained by that. Assume for the moment that didn't exist. Take it off the table. You're still not free. There's an aspect of your brain that empathizes. Now, have you ever thought of why movies work? And I know I'm not necessarily rambling. There's a thread to this, but it takes certain elements in order to kind of make the point. You're watching them film, and you have these two-dimensional screen. And you look at this, and you may even say, that actor is an asshole. I really dislike that guy. Or that other actor is somewhat of an oddball. Once they're in the film, once they're doing their thing, you're in the story. There's an aspect of your consciousness that you, for the most part, inject into the narrative of that story. You're empathizing. You're investing yourself. You're feeling a particular way. How did you feel when Kirk died? How did you feel when Spock died? In the first film, in the Star Trek, the original series, my world ended when Spock died. My world ended when Spock died. You had Trekkies crying in a movie theater, pained, hurt by the experience, and look, I defy anybody to look at that and not feel some kind of way, particularly if you've watched the original series and you were a full-on Trekkie. It hurt. You relate to the outside world in the same way. you don't necessarily, it may not necessarily be as strident, meaning you may do so on an underlying level. You're seeing more of the narrative in regards to the characters themselves, so you have the full idea of that particular character development that the outside world doesn't necessarily have in normal circumstances. But you're relating to the outside world in the same way. Your empathy. But empathy is a selfish impulse. It is immensely selfish. You're essentially saying, if I was in a situation, I would feel this way about it. That's purely related to you. That's purely related to you. Now, there are extremes of this, there are extremes of this where everyone should feel a particular way about something, just from a human level. Even that gets a little sketchy in this case, but assume for the moment there are extremes. So no, I don't necessarily want to be in Auschwitz. I think anybody in Auschwitz will have a hellish of a time. But let's say you're not on that extreme. Let's say we're just functioning in the normal way in which we operate around the world in our day-to-day environment. In that situation, I would feel a particular way. It's purely related to you. But understand, that level of empathy, that level of putting yourself in that particular place to some degree constrains you. It constrains you. Meaning, in any society where you're around people, to some degree, you yourself are going to be constrained by your reality or your idea of the outside world. Now, this also gets to a second point related to the second constraint. The outside world. You yourself as an individual have this conception of the outside world in your head. This is what I think the outside world is like. You never really touch that outside world. You do, to a certain extent. You touch the edges of the outside world. But in your head, you have this understanding. This is what the outside world is like. It's almost like a physical thing to you. It's there. It's ever present. You're aware of it. You bump into it in everything that you do. Some people, in dealing with this idea of the outside world, and understand for each and every individual, that outside world is a very different thing. And yet, to each particular person, that outside world is definitive and real. They bump into it. You have some people say, okay, I don't necessarily want to have much friction with this thing that I consider to be the outside world, and so they contract themselves. They become more introverted. You have other people who rebel against it, who say, this is what I think the outside world is like, and how dare the outside world try to tell me what I should be like as a person. I'm going to rebel against this outside world. Neither one of these cases are freedom. Both of these cases are the individual defining themselves by what they have themselves in their heads about the outside world. Now, yes, there are definitive things about the outside world in the case of maybe laws of a particular nation or whatever. But beyond that, this is what they have in their heads. And this is what they're rebelling against. Meaning this is what, to some degree, they're constrained by. It's not radical freedom, or it's not radical not caring about it. Like, I can't think of the word for it. But it's not like just complete unconcern. It's not, I can't think of a synonym for it. There's a very specific synonym that I'm looking for. Yeah, I can't think of the word. The word is escaping me. But it's not as if they're not caring about it. It's not this thing of radical indifference. No, they're acknowledging and they're comporting themselves in relation to this outside external thing. Even in the sandbox world of no God, you're still stuck. You're still stuck. You as a person are still stuck in this case of either empathizing. Me, in this selfish situation, I believe I'm going to be in this situation. I will feel this particular way. So yes, I'm taking a position on it. My feelings are themselves are invested in this image of myself in this other situation. That's still selfish. We call it empathy. In the other case, it's this other scenario of creating an image of the outside world and comporting yourself in relation to the image of the outside world, either contracting or rebelling against. It's not radical indifference. You rarely find radical indifference to whatever the outside world is. And even I would make the case in this kind of lib society where live and let live, your freedom, for the most part, ends at the tip of your nose, or at the tip of my nose. You're still stuck. You're still stuck. There is no radical indifference. How you are just as a human being constrains you in many respects. Even if you take out this idea of being raised in a particular society and constrained by just that particular thing, this societal thing, you still can't get away from it. Any arrangement of human beings, that particular thing will be called somewhat of a society. And yes, you're either comporting yourself against it or for it. Meaning I'm contracting myself so I can fit within it, or I'm just rebelling against it. How you're made up as a human being kind of eliminates any thought of not caring, radical indifference. Even in a world where there is no God, your very essence is just of being human being constrains you. Radical freedom is nowhere to be found. I honestly think there should be nothing wrong at all with me doing the signage for it. And yet again, as a human being, I'm somewhat limited in the sense where I have feelings about it. I don't know if those feelings are how I would feel. I think it's either some combination of how I would feel in that situation, which I don't think I would care. And because I don't think I would care, I don't think it's how I would feel about the situation. I think it's how it would be perceived from the outside world. In which case, I'm still bumping up my decisions with what I have in my head of the outside world. There are going to be some people who don't care about it. You may have a percentage of people who think it's craven. That percentage is probably going to be very small, and yet, the feelings are there for it. It's bizarre, man. Feelings are really bizarre. Feelings are bizarre. I don't necessarily know where it comes from in that case. Meaning, I don't necessarily know where that feeling originates of, oh man, this feels craven to do this, even though it's the most natural thing in the world to do signage. I don't know if it comes from if I was in that particular perspective, and is there a perspective that may see it that way, and no, I don't want her to see it that way. But again, this is still selfish. This is me putting myself in that situation. Or if it's how does the outside world view it. I think it's probably some combination of both. Both of those things are weird. And at the end of the day, both of those things constrain freedom. Even if you go with this kind of atheistic idea, you're still stuck. Radical freedom is nowhere to be found. So I'll leave it at that. All right. If you enjoy the content, feel free to share, write, subscribe, and you can always support the work through Patreon. This one wasn't political. This was just this kind of awareness as I was writing the signage for stuff. I did send it to Real Progressives, by the way. I thought the emotion was foolish, so I sent it. All right, guys, have a good one.